Peter Aldous.
Thank you, Mr. Robertson. It's a pleasure to speak with you in the chair. I congratulate both the Backbench Business Committee for granting this debate and my honourable friend, the member for Northampton South, for securing and leading it. Before I came to this place, I practised as a chartered surveyor for 27 years in Suffolk and Norfolk, and much of my work focused on the small and medium-sized house building sector, helping to secure planning permissions for sites and then selling them. Today, my interaction with the sector is less direct, though the conclusion that I reach is that it is now in a far less healthy state than it was. Some might say that it's fighting for its very survival, and everyone and every area is far worse off for this. Mr. Robertson, I believe that it's first important to highlight the advantages of a vibrant SME house building sector. Not only do they build much-needed homes, but they do so invariably with ingenuity, providing well-designed and bespoke properties, often on sites that present construction challenges that larger house builders shy away from. As they are invariably deeply embedded in their local communities where they live, they have a sense of pride in the homes that they build, which invariably enhance the local street scene. They also have a significant positive impact on the local economy, employing apprentices, engaging local architects, buying from local builders merchants, and working with other local businesses such as electricians, plumbers, and landscape gardeners. At a time where we need to be boosting economic growth, there is an urgent need for a vibrant local SME house building sector right across the whole of the UK. Mr. Robertson, against this backdrop, it is very concerning that the sector is not in rude health. In March, a report commissioned by the House Builders Federation in partnership with Close Brothers Property Finance and Travis Perkins found that planning delays and rising costs are crippling SME house builders. Their conclusions are stark. Securing planning permission is the major barrier to growth. They can't find sites. Local authority staffing shortages are exacerbating the problem. Rising materials and energy costs are also a major concern. And as we've heard, over 2/3 are impacted by the nutrients issue that is restricting development in more than a quarter of local authority areas in England. And finally, the sector, I'm afraid, as a whole, are unhappy with the government's current approach on housing. When I look at the SME housing sector in the North Suffolk and Waveney area, it is still there, but it is dwindling. The faces are getting older and more wrinkled, and there are fewer new entrants, with many put off by the three barriers of planning, access to finance, and legal complexities and bureaucracy associated with running a building company. At present, on a daily basis, my inbox is full with emails with people looking for a home in which they can live securely and comfortably. When this happens, I will then liaise with the local council, and they invariably do their best to assist, but, Mr. Robertson, they are not magicians. They cannot conjure houses out of nowhere. And it is in this context that we urgently need to revive the SME house building sector. That brings me on to the solutions, and I would just like to make the following suggestions. Firstly, we must ensure that there are sufficient sites available for SME house builders. There is a concern that the abandoning of targets for local areas could lead to a reduction in the number of sites coming forward for development, and whilst it is early days, it should be noted that the number of housing projects granted planning permission in the last quarter of 2022 fell below 3,000 for the first time since that particular data set was started back in 2006. The number of projects for which planning approval was obtained in the whole of 2022 was under 12,500. This compares to 21,000 in 2017. This is a situation that needs to be monitored very, very closely to ensure that there is not an unintended and undesirable consequence of this change in national planning policy. Secondly, Mr. Robertson, we must make sure that local planning authorities are functioning properly. This is not a criticism of planning officers who invariably do a good job in difficult circumstances. What we must ensure is that planning departments are properly resourced and adequately staffed. The planning process must become more streamlined, and we must ensure that suitable sites are made available for SME house builders. In recent years, there has been a move towards developing large, what I would call large garden village type developments on the edge of towns. And whilst these do have the advantage from a strategic planning perspective of being better able to provide the necessary supporting infrastructure, they do result in SME house builders effectively being excluded from the market. My third point is that in many respects, one of the solutions to the problem is already there in the form of Homes England, who do have the ability to make sites available and also to provide development finance through the Levelling Up Home Builders Fund. I would ask my honourable friend, the Minister, in her summing up, to give an undertaking to provide Homes England with the resources to increase their work in these two areas, which are major obstacles that confront SME house builders. There is also a need to encourage the high street banks to be more responsive and sympathetic to their house builder clients, and there may well be a role for the British Business Bank to promote such an approach. My final point, Mr. Robertson, is, and this is perhaps a left field suggestion, the zero rating of VAT for conversion and refurbishment work, so as to put such projects on a level playing field with new build. It does strike me that this could solve two problems at the same time. Firstly, the subject of this debate, which is the slow demise of the SME house building sector, and secondly, the decline of our high streets and town centres, which need revitalising, and where there is an opportunity to reuse what is, I think, millions of square feet of accommodation, often above shops, right across the whole country. An SME house builder will often start off, when they start on their career, doing conversion work before they then move on to new build. This idea could encourage more people into the sector, and I would ask the government to give it full consideration. In conclusion, Mr. Robertson, we have a housing crisis in this country at the present time. SME house builders on their own will not solve it, but the current situation where the sector is in gradual decline does seriously handicap and restrict our ability to provide all people with a place that they can call their home. We must also have in mind the enormous benefits that a vibrant SME house building sector can bring to local economies. What we must do is to set out a route map for the sector, which in the first instance provides the opportunity for people to start a business and then to progress it, and perhaps to move on to become first a regional company, and then, if they want to, a national house builder. Thank you.